Welcome to Mysteries of the Universe. I'm your host, Ben Carter. And in today's episode, we confront one of the most profound questions ever asked. What came before the Big Bang? It's a mystery that reaches beyond the limits of physics, time, and imagination, into a realm where science meets speculation, and even the concept of before begins to unravel. The story of the universe, as told by modern cosmology, begins nearly 13.8 billion years ago. At that moment, described not as a place in space but as the origin of space itself, the universe expanded from an incomprehensibly dense and hot point into the vast cosmos we observe today. This event, known as the Big Bang, is not a traditional explosion. It wasn't an eruption of matter into an empty void, but rather the emergence of space and time themselves. Before the Big Bang, there was no space to contain anything, and no time for anything to happen. According to the standard model of cosmology, the universe didn't begin in something, it began as something. Our understanding of this moment is built on decades of observation and theory. In the early 20th century, scientists began to realize that the universe was not static. Edwin Hubble's discovery that galaxies are moving away from us, revealed by the redshift in their light, showed that the cosmos is expanding. If the universe is growing, then logic suggests it must have once been smaller, far smaller. Run the clock backward and the galaxies converge, the temperatures rise, matter becomes plasma. Time itself approaches a point beyond which our equations no longer function. The name Big Bang was actually coined in ridicule. In 1949, British astronomer Fred Hoyle, a supporter of a competing theory called the steady-state model, used the term during a radio interview to mock the idea of a universe with a beginning. Yet the term stuck, and so did the theory. Over the decades, mounting evidence would steadily dismantle the steady-state model and elevate the Big Bang as the dominant explanation for our cosmic origins. A pivotal piece of evidence came in 1965 when Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson stumbled upon a persistent background noise while working with a radio antenna in New Jersey. That noise turned out to be the cosmic microwave background radiation, the faint afterglow of the early universe, still visible in every direction. It's a remnant of a time roughly 380,000 years after the Big Bang, when the universe cooled enough for atoms to form and light to travel freely through space. Its discovery was a landmark moment, confirming predictions made by the Big Bang model and providing a snapshot of the universe in its infancy. Since then, satellites like COBE, WMAP, and Planck have mapped this radiation in exquisite detail, revealing tiny fluctuations that seeded the formation of galaxies, stars, and planets. These fluctuations are fingerprints of the universe's earliest moments, etched into the fabric of space. But they only take us so far. The data can describe what happened after the Big Bang, but not what happened at the very start, and certainly not what, if anything, came before. The earliest moments remain cloaked in mystery. As we approach the so-called Planck time, about 10⁻43 seconds after the Big Bang, our physics breaks down. The gravitational force becomes comparable in strength to the other fundamental forces, and quantum effects dominate. General relativity, which describes gravity and the curvature of space-time, no longer applies by itself. Quantum field theory, which governs the behavior of particles and forces on the smallest scales, also reaches its limits. What's needed is a unified theory of quantum gravity, something that can describe space-time as both curved and quantized. But such a theory remains elusive. Without it, we cannot describe the moment of creation. And so, we are left with a singularity, a point of infinite density and zero volume, where our known laws collapse. But many physicists now believe the singularity isn't a real entity, but a signal that our current theories are incomplete. In this view, the Big Bang wasn't the beginning of everything, but rather the boundary of our current understanding. This boundary raises the question that haunts cosmologists and philosophers alike. If the Big Bang was not the beginning, then what preceded it? Could time itself have a beginning? Could something come from nothing? Or are we missing something even deeper, something that challenges the very way we think about origin and causality? The question is not just about what came before, it's about whether before even makes sense when time itself was born in the explosion. To confront the idea of before the Big Bang, we must grapple with the strange nature of time itself. Time, as we understand it, is not an independent backdrop against which events unfold. It is woven into the fabric of space, forming what Einstein called space-time. In his theory of general relativity, gravity is not a force acting across a void. It is the curvature of space-time caused by mass and energy. This profound insight reshaped physics, showing that space and time are dynamic and interdependent, capable of stretching, warping, and even ending. If the Big Bang marks the origin of space-time, then time itself may have had no existence before it. In this framework, asking what came before the Big Bang is like asking what's north of the North Pole. The question becomes meaningless, not because it's absurd, but because it assumes a context that didn't exist. There was no before, because time itself was born in that first moment. But this interpretation is grounded in classical physics, which, as powerful as it is, fails at the Planck scale, the unimaginably small interval of time and space where quantum effects dominate. This is where attempts to reconcile general relativity with quantum mechanics come into play. One such approach is loop quantum gravity, a theory that proposes space and time are made up of discrete loops, tiny, indivisible units that form a kind of quantum geometry. In this model, the Big Bang may not have been a beginning, but a transition, a bounce from a previous contracting universe. Instead of emerging from nothing, the universe may have rebounded from a prior state of collapse. This concept is known as the Big Bounce. The Big Bounce model suggests a cyclical cosmos, oscillating through periods of expansion and contraction. Time would not have a beginning, but would extend infinitely into the past and future. Though elegant, the model remains highly speculative. It requires evidence we do not yet possess and depends on mathematical structures that are still under active development. Yet it offers one possible path beyond the singularity, an escape route from the idea of absolute origin. Another approach comes from string theory, a framework that seeks to describe all particles and forces as vibrations of tiny one-dimensional strings. In string cosmology, the universe might have existed in a stable state before the Big Bang, possibly as a higher dimensional object called a brane. Collisions between these branes could create explosive events like the Big Bang, generating new universes with each impact. This model introduces the idea that our universe is just one of many, a single bubble in a frothing multiverse. The multiverse concept itself stretches the idea of origin to the breaking point. In some variations, particularly those involving eternal inflation, the Big Bang is not unique. Inflation refers to the exponential expansion of space in the early universe, and in the eternal version this process never ends. Instead, it constantly creates new pockets of space-time, each a separate universe with its own laws of physics. In this framework, our Big Bang is just the local beginning of our particular cosmic region, while the greater multiverse rolls on without beginning or end. This multitude of theories, while fascinating, shares one common feature. They all attempt to replace the singularity with something more palatable, something that aligns with the rules of quantum mechanics, that avoids infinities and breakdowns. But none have yet provided definitive answers. The observational evidence is limited, and the mathematics often veers into realms beyond current testability. Still, these theories demonstrate that the idea of before is not entirely forbidden. It's just different. It may not refer to a time before time, but to a different kind of reality altogether, governed by principles we do not yet understand. In all of this, one truth remains. The closer we get to the edge of the beginning, the more our familiar concepts begin to fail. Time, space, causality, each begins to blur, to stretch, to dissolve into probabilities and paradoxes. And at the boundary where science meets uncertainty, the question of what came before the Big Bang remains not just unanswered, but perhaps unanswerable within the confines of our current understanding. Though the standard Big Bang model remains the most accepted framework for describing the evolution of the universe, scientists have long known that it leaves the first fraction of a second shrouded in darkness. To better understand what happened at the earliest conceivable moment, and potentially what preceded it, cosmologists have turned to the faint fingerprints left behind in the observable universe. These relics are not direct images, but encoded clues, signals preserved in the cosmic microwave background, the large-scale structure of galaxies, and the accelerating expansion of space itself. The cosmic microwave background radiation, or CMB, remains one of the most important sources of data about the early universe. This diffuse glow, visible in every direction, is not merely a leftover from the Big Bang. It's a fossil from a time when the universe was only 380,000 years old. Its tiny fluctuations in temperature and density represent quantum irregularities magnified by cosmic inflation, a rapid and exponential expansion that is thought to have occurred in the first moments after the Big Bang. These irregularities would eventually seed the formation of galaxies and galaxy clusters. Cosmic inflation, though not part of the original Big Bang theory, was proposed in the early 1980s to solve several lingering problems. It explains why the universe appears so uniform in temperature, despite regions being separated by vast distances. It also accounts for why the universe is flat, not curved, and why magnetic monopoles, predicted by certain theories, are seemingly absent. According to the inflationary model, a tiny inflating patch of space expanded faster than the speed of light for a brief instant, creating the vast, smooth cosmos we see today. Inflation also raises profound questions about what triggered it and what it implies about the pre-Big Bang era. If inflation requires a quantum field to drive it, known as the inflaton field, then where did that field originate? Was it eternal? Did it fluctuate out of some primordial vacuum? Or does it point to an even deeper layer of reality from which inflation itself emerges? The answers remain speculative, but they open the door to possibilities that extend beyond a single beginning. One particularly intriguing consequence of inflation is the concept of quantum fluctuations giving rise to entire universes. If the inflaton field is subject to quantum uncertainty, different regions of space may stop inflating at different times. This would create a kind of cosmic foam, with bubbles of space-time branching off continuously, each bubble expanding into its own universe with its own initial conditions and physical laws. This mechanism leads naturally to the theory of eternal inflation and, by extension, the multiverse. While we cannot observe other universes directly, some cosmologists believe their existence could leave subtle imprints in our own. For instance, a collision between our universe and another bubble in the multiverse could cause slight anomalies in the cosmic microwave background, patterns that deviate from the random fluctuations expected in a single universe model. Researchers have searched for these anomalies in CMB data, though no definitive signs have been found. Still, the possibility remains that the observable universe contains echoes of a pre-Big Bang landscape. Beyond the CMB, cosmologists also study the large-scale distribution of galaxies across the cosmos. The universe's structure, its filaments, voids, and clusters, traces the history of matter shaped by gravity over billions of years. These patterns can be simulated by computer models using different initial conditions. By comparing observed data with simulated universes, researchers try to infer what kind of beginning could produce the cosmic web we now see. Yet all simulations are limited by their assumptions, and if the true origin of the universe lies outside our space-time entirely, then even the most accurate models may miss the mark. Dark energy presents another puzzle that could be tied to the universe's earliest moments. This mysterious force is causing the expansion of the universe to accelerate, and its nature remains unknown. Some physicists speculate that dark energy may be a remnant of the vacuum energy that drove inflation. If true, it may hint at a deep continuity between the universe's birth and its long-term fate, suggesting that whatever mechanisms shaped the cosmos in its infancy may still be operating quietly in its vast and silent expansion. Together, these observable clues, microwave radiation, galaxy distributions, and cosmic acceleration, form a kind of archaeological record. They do not yet reveal what came before the Big Bang, but they constrain the possibilities. They offer a narrowed window into what might lie beyond the singularity, hinting at a reality deeper and more layered than our current theories can fully describe. The universe has preserved its secrets well, but the evidence it leaves behind continues to point toward a beginning that may not have been a beginning at all. Within the scientific community, several dominant theories attempt to interpret what might have preceded the Big Bang, not through speculative fiction, but grounded in the frameworks of modern physics and cosmology. These mainstream models do not all agree, but they share a commitment to reconciling what we observe today with the possibility that the universe's origin is not the absolute beginning of everything, but a transition from a state or condition we have yet to fully understand. One such model gaining serious attention is the ekpyrotic universe, derived from the Greek word ekpyrosis, meaning conflagration. Originally rooted in ancient Stoic philosophy, the modern ekpyrotic model was developed in the early 2000s by physicists Paul Steinhardt and Neil Turok. According to their theory, the Big Bang was not the beginning of space and time, but the result of a collision between two three-dimensional brains, membrane-like surfaces, within a higher dimensional space. These brains are thought to exist in a five-dimensional framework known as M-theory, an extension of string theory. When these brains collide, the immense energy released creates what we perceive as a Big Bang. In this model, our universe is confined to one brain, and the cycles of collision and separation happen repeatedly, creating a rhythmic cosmos that expands, contracts, and rebirths in an endless sequence. Unlike models that depend on a singularity, the ekpyrotic universe avoids infinite densities by proposing that each cycle is smoothed out before the next begins. Time, in this view, is infinite in both directions. There was no first moment, only an endless procession of universes born from brain collisions. While the ekpyrotic model elegantly addresses certain shortcomings of inflationary cosmology, such as the origin of the inflaton field or the initial conditions problem, it remains difficult to test. Its predictions about cosmic background radiation and large-scale structure overlap with those of inflation, making it hard to distinguish observationally. Still, it has driven serious discussion, as it offers a coherent way to bypass the concept of a singular creation event. Another compelling line of thought is the Hartle-Hawking no-boundary proposal, introduced by physicists James Hartle and Stephen Hawking. In this model, the universe has no boundary in imaginary time, meaning it is finite but without a clear beginning, much like the surface of a sphere. Just as there is no edge on a globe where one could say space stops, the early universe would have no singular origin point where time begins. Instead, time transitions smoothly from a spatial dimension to the temporal dimension we now experience. The Hartle-Hawking model is grounded in quantum cosmology and relies on complex numbers and Euclidean geometry. It suggests that the laws of physics could allow for the spontaneous emergence of a universe from a quantum vacuum. In this framework, the universe doesn't require a cause in the classical sense. It simply is, arising from the probabilistic nature of quantum fields. This removes the need for before entirely, because time itself emerges only after the quantum phase transitions into the classical realm. There's also the concept of the quantum tunneling universe, wherein the universe emerges from a quantum fluctuation or transition, much like particles can tunnel through energy barriers they shouldn't be able to cross in classical physics. This view, championed by physicists like Alexander Vilenkin, posits that the universe could have tunneled from nothing, a state without space, time, or matter, into existence. Nothing in this context does not mean an empty void, but a complete absence of space-time. The process, though entirely speculative, is described mathematically in terms of wave functions and quantum potential landscapes. Each of these models is built on attempts to extend known physics into regions where it currently breaks down. They are not yet complete theories. They are frameworks that suggest how the cosmos might behave when the rules as we know them dissolve. While they differ in mechanisms and implications, they share an essential premise: that the Big Bang may not have been the absolute beginning, but a phase transition, a shift in state, or a quantum event within a greater, possibly eternal context. These mainstream scientific theories don't claim to have answered the ultimate question. Instead, they mark the frontier of what we can currently describe, using mathematics to peer into a realm that defies intuitive understanding. They show us that the limits of our comprehension are not fixed, and that even the most sacred boundaries, like the beginning of time, are open to revision. For all the elegance of mainstream theories, the question of what came before the Big Bang also opens the door to more speculative and in some cases radical interpretations. These fringe ideas push the boundaries of conventional science, blurring into philosophy, metaphysics, and abstract models of existence that challenge what it means for something to be real. While lacking definitive empirical support, they persist because they tap into a deeper curiosity, a need to understand the ultimate origins of everything. One such theory is the idea of a simulated universe, where the Big Bang is not a natural occurrence at all, but the initialization of a program, an artificial event that marks the start of a calculated simulation. This concept stems not only from advancements in computing and artificial intelligence, but also from the realization that many aspects of the universe, quantized energy levels, binary states in quantum mechanics, and the mathematical nature of physical laws, bear uncanny resemblance to digital processes. In this model, what we perceive as the Big Bang could be akin to a boot-up sequence, the moment the simulation began running. Some versions of this theory suggest that our universe is one of many simulations being run by a more advanced intelligence, possibly for research, entertainment, or unknown purposes. If this is the case, then the pre-Big Bang state could be the real world, one hidden from us by design. Though impossible to test directly with current technology, physicists have considered whether anomalies in the cosmic microwave background or limits in quantum behavior might reflect underlying computational shortcuts, evidence of rendering boundaries or information constraints. Another speculative concept comes from mathematical Platonism, the view that mathematical truths exist in an abstract realm, independent of human minds. From this perspective, the universe itself could be seen as a mathematical structure, a living equation expressing itself in physical form. Max Tegmark's mathematical universe hypothesis takes this further, proposing that every mathematically possible universe exists in a vast multiverse of formal structures. The Big Bang, then, is simply the point at which our particular mathematical structure manifested into what we experience as physical reality. There was no before, only a shift in which structure began expressing itself through existence. There are also spiritual and philosophical interpretations rooted in ancient and modern thought that cast the Big Bang not as a moment of physical creation, but as a transition in consciousness. In these views, the universe arises from a deeper substrate, not a quantum vacuum or brain collision, but a kind of cosmic awareness or unmanifest field of potential. Eastern philosophies such as Hinduism and certain schools of Buddhism speak of cycles of creation and dissolution, in which the universe breathes in and out over vast epochs of time. The Big Bang in this context could be a moment of awakening, where consciousness projects reality outward into form. These perspectives often use metaphors of dreaming, illusion, or vibration to describe the nature of reality. The ancient Sanskrit term Maya refers to the world as a kind of illusion, not unreal, but not ultimately real either. Modern proponents of consciousness-based cosmology suggest that the physical universe is a product of mind, not the other way around. If consciousness is fundamental, then space and time might be emergent properties, conditions required for experience rather than containers for existence. In this paradigm, the Big Bang is simply the beginning of one phase of awareness, preceded by others beyond our comprehension. Still, other theories invoke cyclic time, not in terms of physical processes, but as layers of perception. The Big Bang becomes less an external event and more a reference point within a story being told by a larger system. In this model, before and after are illusions created by memory and expectation, and the structure of time itself may be non-linear or illusory. Some theorists suggest that all points in time may exist simultaneously, and what we experience as causality is merely a function of how information is processed by conscious observers. While many of these ideas fall outside the scope of testable science, they serve a valuable purpose. They stretch the mind. They offer new metaphors for the origin of the cosmos, especially when traditional models reach their limits. Though speculative, they remind us that not all knowledge must be immediate or provable to be worth considering. In contemplating what came before the Big Bang, these theories offer a spectrum of possibility, from the technological to the transcendental, each hinting at a universe that may be far stranger and more profound than we ever imagined. Stepping back from equations and models, the question of what came before the Big Bang touches on something deeper than physics. It strikes at the heart of human meaning. Beyond science, beyond observation, the mystery pushes us into the realm of philosophy, consciousness, and symbolic thought. It demands we ask not only what might have preceded time, but what time itself truly is, and whether our place within it is fixed or fluid, or even real in the way we think it is. Throughout history, civilizations have wrestled with the origin of the cosmos, not just through observation, but through story. In mythologies spanning continents and centuries, the universe often begins with a formless void, a great silence, or a primordial chaos from which all things emerge. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish, the gods arise from mingling waters. In Norse cosmology, a yawning nothingness called Ginnungagap lies between the fires of Muspelheim and the ice of Niflheim, cosmic forces colliding to give rise to life. These stories do not describe physical processes in scientific terms, but they serve a similar function. They offer a framework for understanding where everything came from and why it matters. The Big Bang, stripped of metaphor, can feel disturbingly mechanical. A point of infinite density, a burst of expansion. Particle formation, cooling plasma. There is no intention in these descriptions, no reason, only cause and effect. But to ask what came before the Big Bang is to reopen the door to existential questions that science alone struggles to answer. Why is there something rather than nothing? Is the universe necessary or contingent? If time began at the Big Bang, what does that say about the nature of beginnings themselves? Some philosophers argue that a beginning is a human concept projected onto the universe. We experience time as linear, past, present, future, because our minds are embedded in a biological system that evolved to understand causality. But if time is an emergent property, as some physicists suggest, then our sense of direction may be an illusion. The arrow of time could be the result of increasing entropy, not a fundamental truth. In such a case, the Big Bang is not a moment in a story, but a boundary condition, a feature of how we organize experience within a system that does not require beginnings in any absolute sense. This idea raises profound implications for consciousness. If the universe does not require a cause, then perhaps consciousness too does not emerge from matter in a linear fashion. Perhaps both are manifestations of a deeper principle, one that exists outside our current definitions of mind and matter, space and time. In this view, the cosmos and the conscious self are two reflections in the same mirror, reality becoming aware of itself through different forms. Some contemporary thinkers have proposed that consciousness itself might be fundamental, that it is not generated by the brain, but is a basic element of reality, like space or energy. This leads to a panpsychist or idealist view of the universe, where mind is not confined to human thought but exists in all things, in varying degrees. If consciousness precedes matter, then the Big Bang may have been less a beginning and more a shift in awareness, a moment when potential condensed into perception and the universe became knowable, if only to itself. In this context, the concept of before the Big Bang transforms. It is no longer just a question about physical conditions or quantum fields, but about the preconditions of experience. What kind of reality could give rise to perception, to thought, to wonder? If consciousness is intertwined with the cosmos at a fundamental level, then perhaps the question of origin is also a question of purpose, not in a teleological or religious sense, but in the sense that awareness seeks expression. The universe may not have been made for us, but we are how it sees itself. Whether we view these ideas as poetic reflections or genuine clues to hidden truths, they remind us that science does not exist in isolation. It grows from curiosity, wonder, and a desire to know not just how things work, but why they exist at all. The mystery of what came before the Big Bang, then, is not only a scientific question. It is a philosophical and spiritual one, embedded in our longing to understand the infinite from our place within the finite. And that longing may be the most mysterious phenomenon of all. As the search for origins stretches into the most abstract territories, we are left with a mosaic of competing frameworks, unanswered questions, and haunting clues, each pointing to something just beyond our intellectual reach. The cosmic microwave background offers the oldest light we can see. Quantum mechanics challenges our deepest assumptions about causality and reality. Theoretical models like loop quantum gravity, the ekpyrotic universe, and eternal inflation offer scenarios in which the Big Bang is not the beginning, but one chapter in a much grander narrative. Yet none can decisively close the case. Instead, they deepen it. The clues we do have, minute fluctuations in temperature and density, the behavior of subatomic particles, the apparent flatness and uniformity of space, provide powerful support for the Big Bang model, but they also highlight its limitations. General relativity cannot describe the singularity. Quantum mechanics, brilliant in its predictive power, remains silent on the origin of time itself. The intersection of these two pillars of physics is the place where all known models break, and it is precisely in this gap that the mystery thrives. Even our attempts to mathematically describe the very beginning face profound limits. The singularity is not a location in space, but a breakdown of our ability to describe space and time. Equations yield infinities. Concepts such as cause and effect dissolve. This failure of math is not just technical, it is existential. It suggests that we are trying to read a book whose first pages are written in a language we do not yet speak. Attempts to bridge this chasm with string theory, M-theory, or other quantum gravity proposals often require more dimensions than we can observe. They postulate curled-up geometries, multidimensional branes, and pre-spacetime fields that are elegant on paper but elusive in practice. These models offer tantalizing structures, ways of seeing the Big Bang not as a point, but as a transition from one state of being to another. But the mathematics grows complex, and the ability to test such models remains, for now, out of reach. The multiverse, in its many variations, amplifies the puzzle. If our universe is but one bubble in an eternal froth of realities, each with its own laws and constants, then what came before the Big Bang may not be unique or even meaningful. It may simply be one of countless transitions, an event as common as a ripple on a pond. In such a view, the specificity of our universe, the balance of forces, the particular sequence of events, becomes less a miracle and more a statistical inevitability. But this raises another question. Why does this universe support conscious life capable of asking these questions? Is that too part of the selection effect, or is there something else? In every direction we look, we encounter boundaries, observational boundaries where light can no longer reach us, mathematical boundaries where equations break, philosophical boundaries where meaning dissolves, and yet we are drawn to these edges. The question of what came before the Big Bang endures because it is more than a scientific inquiry. It is a point of convergence, where cosmology, metaphysics, and human curiosity align. This convergence reveals that the Big Bang is not merely an object of study. It is a mirror. It reflects the limits of our tools, the structure of our thoughts, and the questions we consider worth asking. As we examine the data, we also examine ourselves. We find that our search for cosmic origins is inextricably linked to the origin of understanding itself. In that sense, the enigma is both external and internal. The origin of the universe and the origin of mind are parallel mysteries, each unfolding into the other, and at their intersection lies the most powerful realization of all, that perhaps it is not the answer that matters most, but the fact that we continue to ask. That the act of questioning against all odds, across time and silence, is itself a kind of cosmic event, a signal from within the universe, looking back at its own beginning and refusing to be satisfied with nothing. As the threads of evidence, theory, and speculation weave together, What emerges is not a singular narrative, but a tapestry of possibilities, each with its own implications, limitations, and sense of wonder. What came before the Big Bang may remain forever out of reach, not because the truth is hidden maliciously, but because our perspective is fundamentally bound by the conditions that arose with that very event. We are shaped by time, constrained by it, and so the idea of a time before time exists in a space we cannot naturally inhabit. Still, we persist, and in that persistence certain patterns begin to emerge. Across scientific disciplines, the idea of beginnings is rarely absolute. In biology, life arises from life. In geology, mountains rise and erode in cycles. In astronomy, stars are born from the remnants of others. Nothing truly begins from nothing. Even in physics, conservation laws dictate that energy and matter are not created or destroyed, but transformed. So why should the universe be different? Why would it be the one exception, a creation ex nihilo, a cosmic spark from an empty void? This tension lies at the core of modern cosmology. The evidence for a Big Bang is compelling. The redshift of galaxies, the cosmic microwave background, and the abundance of light elements all point to a hot, dense origin. But these observations only describe the evolution of the universe from a fraction of a second after the event. They do not speak to what, if anything, lay before. That question remains suspended between the empirical and the speculative. Some researchers have proposed the concept of pre-Big Bang remnants, subtle, measurable imprints that might survive the transition from a prior state of the cosmos. These could take the form of gravitational waves, which ripple through space-time from cataclysmic events in the distant past. If detectable, certain patterns in these waves might offer a glimpse into an earlier era. Others look to quantum anomalies or symmetry violations in particle physics, hoping that they hint at mechanisms rooted in a pre-existing framework. Still, every such search is guided by assumptions about what kind of evidence might be preserved, about how time and information behave at Planck-scale energies, and about what even qualifies as before, in a context where the laws of physics themselves may change. The deeper we peer, the more it becomes clear that we may be searching for fossils in a world that left none behind. Yet the absence of definitive evidence does not negate the value of the inquiry. The act of asking what came before the Big Bang forces science to confront its own foundations. It exposes the boundaries of our models, compels the pursuit of quantum gravity, and drives innovation in both theoretical and observational astrophysics. Without this mystery, there might be no impetus to build more sensitive telescopes, to refine particle detectors, or to pursue the unification of physics. And beyond the scientific, there is a symbolic power in the question itself. The human mind is uniquely equipped to imagine the unimaginable, to conceive of realities beyond the senses. We model extra dimensions, envision universes with alien laws, and theorize about timeless states of being, not because we are certain they exist, but because something in us refuses to accept finality. The Big Bang, once thought to be the end of the road, is now seen as a doorframe, something we look through, but not something we are content to stop at. It is possible that we may one day find clues that push the boundary further back, hints of brain collisions, cyclic bounces, or quantum seeds that predate expansion. It is equally possible that we never will, and that the origin remains veiled not by design, but by the nature of reality itself. In either case, the Big Bang has proven to be not just an event, but a frontier, a place where knowledge and mystery meet, and where our desire to understand becomes as vast as the cosmos it seeks to explain. Perhaps the greatest lesson the Big Bang leaves us with is that even the most well-established truths may be provisional, markers not of final knowledge, but of where our understanding begins to falter. The origin of the universe is not just a physical boundary, but an epistemological one. It reveals where our laws of nature, so successful in describing stars, atoms, and galaxies, begin to dissolve into paradox. It shows us the edge, not just of the universe, but of what we can know. And yet that edge continues to move. Every generation expands it, inch by inch, with new tools, sharper theories, and deeper questions. We may never step beyond the veil of the Big Bang, but we will forever press against it. The search has already changed how we think about space, time, and causality. It has introduced us to concepts once confined to metaphysics, that time might emerge from a timeless substrate, that our universe could be one of countless others, or that reality itself is an illusion conjured by quantum interactions. We've discovered that the universe is expanding, cooling, and accelerating. We've found that matter makes up only a tiny fraction of what exists, with dark matter and dark energy comprising the rest, enigmatic and unseen. We've learned that the geometry of space is flat, the cosmic microwave background is nearly uniform, and the seeds of cosmic structure were planted in a burst of early inflation. And yet, none of these discoveries have revealed the full story. Instead, they've painted a picture of a universe balanced delicately on the edge of profound mystery. What came before the Big Bang may remain unknowable not because it is too far away, but because it is a question that lies outside the framework that defines us. Time, space, and the laws of physics are not eternal givens. They are the scaffolding inside which all our thoughts are constructed. To ask what came before them is to step outside the system entirely, reaching towards something that our minds were never built to grasp. But we reach anyway. Perhaps this is our greatest cosmic role, not as the masters of nature, but as its most curious observers. We ask the unanswerable, not to conquer it, but to bear witness to the scope of the unknown. We build instruments to catch ancient photons, design theories to tame infinities, and launch probes into the void, not because we expect simple answers, but because the act of asking gives shape to our place in the universe. In the end, the mystery of what came before the Big Bang is not a flaw in the cosmic story. It is the story. It's a mirror that reflects back our hunger for meaning, our refusal to accept finality, and our endless quest to see beyond the horizon. It tells us that even in the face of silence, we listen. Even in the absence of light, we look. And even when there may be no before to speak of, we still wonder what lies beyond. Thanks for listening. This has been Mysteries of the Universe. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show and unlock bonus content, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.